Did you know that a staggering 75% of people in positions of power believe they are more deserving of respect and admiration than others, simply because of their status? Imagine standing in the courtroom, your voice trembling with the weight of your choices. Deborah, a single mother, waitress, and everyday woman, finds herself in a situation no one could ever prepare for. A situation that forces her to choose between speaking the truth and protecting her son's future, or bowing to the will of a man with more power than she could ever imagine. This is a story of courage, of injustice, and of one woman's fight to make sure the truth is heard. But it's also about something darker, how easily the powerful can manipulate those beneath them and how the system can twist itself into something unrecognizable. The case begins with Derek Mitchell, a young black man, wrongfully accused of a crime he didn't commit. During a routine traffic stop in Los Angeles, Derek, who had no criminal record, is allegedly involved in an altercation with a white police officer. The officer, part of an investigation into police corruption, claims Derek attacked him when, in reality, the truth was far different. But in a city plagued by systemic bias and injustice, the scales are stacked against Derek from the very beginning. Before we continue, I would like to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Make sure you also hit that like and subscribe button. The arrest was quick. The charges, even quicker. Assaulting a police officer is a serious accusation, and to the court and media, Derek became the villain. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that Derek was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. And yet, because of who he was, because of his race, the case took on a life of its own. No one questioned the officer's story. No one thought to look deeper. Enter Leonard Grayson, a wealthy and influential politician whose power stretches across the city and the courtroom. Grayson sees an opportunity here, an opportunity to control the narrative, to use Derek's case to further his own agenda. But he needs someone to testify, someone with credibility. And Deborah, a working mother who can barely make ends meet, becomes his pawn. Grayson knows that Deborah is a woman of principle. She's lived through the hardships of being a single mother in a city that doesn't always show mercy to people like her. He believes that with the right pressure, he can break her. Convince her that testifying against Derek, even though she knows the truth, is the only way to protect her family. After all, she's just a waitress, and Grayson is used to getting what he wants. But Deborah is torn. She knows Derek's story. She's heard the whispers. She's seen the faces, the ones that always look at her differently because of who she is, because of where she comes from. She's lived through the same biases Derek faces, even if her experiences were different. How could she testify against an innocent man? How could she betray the truth when she's seen enough injustice in her own life? Still, the pressure builds. Grayson offers her money, protection, and influence. He promises that if she helps him, her life will change. But Deborah is no fool. She knows that his promises are just words, empty words meant to trap her. She sees through him, even if her fear tells her otherwise. As the courtroom date approaches, Deborah struggles. Every day, she goes to work, serves meals to strangers, and listens to the stories of others who, like her, are trying to survive in a system that's never been built to help them. But as much as she tries to ignore it, the weight of Grayson's demands pulls at her, threatens to drown her. How can she speak out without risking everything? What happens next is a story about courage, the breaking point of a mother's soul, and a fight against a system that refuses to see the truth. Deborah's testimony, though filled with personal pain and raw emotion, sparks a fire in her heart, one that won't be put out. And though she faces a fight of her life, Deborah knows one thing above all else. The truth cannot be silenced, no matter how powerful the people who seek to bury it. Deborah's life hasn't been easy. As a single mother, she spent years working as a waitress, juggling multiple shifts just to make ends meet. It's a tough life, but she does it. She's had no choice. But her story goes deeper than just the daily grind of keeping a roof over her head and food on the table. There are scars from her past, invisible ones, that have shaped the woman she is today. Deborah grew up in foster care. a system that was supposed to protect her, but instead, it left her feeling disposable, unimportant. As a child, she was always the odd one out, black, poor, and forgotten. She remembers the way people looked at her, as if she didn't belong, as if she was just a problem to be dealt with. But her biggest trauma came when she was just a little girl. Deborah's father, an outspoken activist in the 80s, was wrongfully imprisoned for a protest he didn't even attend. He'd been fighting for equal rights, for justice, for people who looked like him. The police didn't care. They saw his activism as a threat, so they silenced him. Deborah witnessed it all, the brutality, the injustice, the helplessness. She was too young to fully understand what was happening, but she saw enough. Enough to know that the system wasn't built to protect people like her or her father. That memory has stayed with her, buried deep, but always there, gnawing at her. It's something she can never escape. Then there's Leonard Grayson, a man who, at first glance, seems like just another powerful politician. But when you dig deeper, you see something else. Grayson's wealth didn't come from hard work or honest dealings. It came from shady real estate deals, laced with ties to corrupt police officers and corporate interests that don't care about the truth, only about money. Grayson built his empire on lies, using his connections to manipulate the system for his own gain. He's driven, ruthless, and will stop at nothing to maintain his hold on power. The law doesn't matter to him, only the outcome. His past is filled with stories of political cases he's twisted, bending them to his will, and leaving a trail of destruction behind him. He knows how to play the game, and he plays it well. Deborah and Grayson's paths cross in a way neither of them could have predicted. It happens one evening when Deborah is serving tables at a high-end restaurant in Los Angeles. It's a place for the rich, the powerful, and the untouchable. Deborah is used to being invisible in these places, just a waitress doing her job. But something about her catches Grayson's eye. It's not her beauty, though she's a striking woman. It's the way she carries herself. There's a calm about her, a quiet strength. She doesn't flinch when she serves powerful people, doesn't cower under their gaze. There's something in her that makes Grayson notice her, something he can't quite place. That night, after Deborah serves him his meal, Grayson approaches her. He offers her money. At first, just a casual conversation about her financial struggles. But Deborah is no fool. She knows he's not just talking to her out of kindness. Grayson's always got something else in mind. His offer is simple, money in exchange for something that could change the course of her life. He wants her to testify against Derek Mitchell, to lie in court and help him secure a conviction. At first, Deborah is taken aback. She's no stranger to financial struggle, and the offer is tempting. But she knows better than to trust someone like Grayson. She knows how powerful men like him operate. She's been on the receiving end of their manipulation before, seen it up close when her father was wrongfully imprisoned. But Grayson sees something in her fear, her vulnerability. He knows that, for a woman like Deborah, the need to protect her son could outweigh any moral compass she might have left. And so, he presses harder, offering more money, promising more protection, painting a picture of a life that could be hers if she agrees. Deborah's mind races. She's been through so much already. Could this man really help her? Could he offer her the life she's always dreamed of? A life where her son doesn't have to struggle. A life where she doesn't have to worry about the next meal, or the rent, or the bills piling up. But as tempting as the offer is, Deborah feels a sense of unease. She can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. That feeling grows stronger when she looks into Grayson's eyes, sees the coldness in them, the way he talks about Derek Mitchell as if he's nothing more than a pawn in a game. Deborah knows one thing for sure. Grayson is no hero, and she's not sure she can trust him. But she's torn. The pressure to do what's right, to stand up for Derek, and the pressure to protect her son, to give him a future she never had, are at war within her. Grayson's offer is tempting, but it's also dangerous. If she agrees, she could lose everything. And if she doesn't, Derek might lose everything. The weight of it all is almost too much to bear. Grayson has made his move, and now Deborah has to decide where her loyalties truly lie. What is more important, the truth or the life she's dreamed of? Deborah's mind is in turmoil. Every day, it's a battle. What's the right thing to do? On one hand, she knows Derek is innocent. She's seen the evidence, and she knows deep down that he didn't commit the crime. But on the other hand, Grayson's words echo in her head. If she refuses, if she stands up for the truth, everything she's worked for could be gone. Her job, her son's future. The weight of it all is crushing. The pressure from Grayson is relentless, and Deborah is running out of time. She thinks about her son, Marcus. The thought of him growing up in a world where nothing is guaranteed, where every step forward seems to be followed by 2 steps back, it scares her. She's fought so hard to give him a better life, to make sure he doesn't feel the sting of the world's injustice the way she did. But now, she's faced with a choice. Betray the truth to protect him, or risk everything to do what's right. Both options tear at her. Both choices leave a bitter taste in her mouth. How did it come to this? How did she get to a place where her values, her beliefs, are being tested in ways she never imagined? Deborah's mind drifts back to the past. She remembers the times when the police ignored her, when she was treated like she didn't matter, just another face in the crowd. She remembers when she was passed over for promotions at work, not because she wasn't qualified, but because she was black. It wasn't always obvious. It wasn't always loud, but it was there. The subtle racism that made her feel like she was always a step behind, always a little less. It was the hurtful comments, the glances, the feeling that no matter how hard she worked, no matter how much she pushed, the system was never going to see her as equal. It's those memories that are fueling her decision now. The system, the people in power, have always been stacked against her. She knows this. She's lived it. And now, it's all coming back to her. She's caught in a web of racial injustice, where doing the right thing doesn't always guarantee a fair outcome, where if you speak up, you risk losing everything, and if you stay silent, you might be complicit in destroying someone else's life. And then there's Grayson, the man who holds the power in his hands, the man who can take everything from her with a snap of his fingers. Deborah can't escape the reality that he knows exactly how to play her. He's not subtle about it either. He's made it clear that if she refuses to testify, if she stands up for Derek, her job as a waitress will be in jeopardy. Her son's future will be in danger. Grayson knows exactly where to hit her, where it hurts the most. He knows how to make her feel small, how to remind her of the things she's always fought to protect. He uses her fear against her, twisting it, manipulating her into thinking that the only way forward is to help him get what he wants, regardless of the truth. But it's not just the threats that weigh on her. It's the gaslighting. Grayson has a way of making her question herself, making her feel like she's doing the right thing when everything in her screams that she's not. He tells her that her testimony is essential for justice, that she's doing the right thing for Derek, for everyone. He makes it sound so simple, just a small lie, just a little help, and everything will be better. But Deborah knows better. She knows that what Grayson is asking for isn't about justice. It's about protecting his own interests. It's about keeping the system the way it is, even if that means sacrificing Derek for the sake of his own power. Meanwhile, Derek's defense team is fighting a battle of their own. Carmen Lopez, Derek's lawyer, is doing everything she can to clear his name, but the system is stacked against them. Every witness they contact seems to turn up missing or too scared to testify. Every lead they chase seems to fall apart. Time is running out, and with the trial just around the corner, the pressure on Carmen and her team is growing. They know Derek is innocent, but proving it in a court of law, where racial biases and corruption run deep, is another story. The jury pool is skewed, the prosecutor's office is biased, and Derek doesn't stand a chance unless something drastic changes. The system that's supposed to protect the innocent is instead working against him at every turn. It's a grim reminder of the uphill battle Derek faces, not just in the courtroom, but in life. For him, the truth doesn't always matter. What matters is who has the power to control the narrative, who has the ability to manipulate the facts to fit their agenda. As Deborah struggles with her decision, the stakes are higher than she could have ever imagined. Every moment, every choice could tip the scales of justice. And in the end, she has to decide, will she fight for what's right, knowing it could cost her everything? Or will she give in to the pressure, to the manipulation, to the system that's been broken for so long? The clock is ticking, and there's no turning back. Deborah steps up to the witness stand, her hands trembling, but her resolve steady. The room falls silent as she begins. The weight of the moment presses down on her shoulders, but she knows this is her chance to speak the truth. Her voice echoes through the courtroom as she recounts the events that led to Derek's wrongful arrest. She takes a deep breath, and the memory hits her like a wave. She remembers that night, the flashing lights, the shouting voices, the aggressive way the officers approached Derek. He was just a young man, minding his business, trying to get through another day. But on that night, his world turned upside down. A routine traffic stop turned into a nightmare. The police, instead of doing their jobs, treated Derek like a criminal from the moment they laid eyes on him. They didn't care about the facts. They didn't care about the truth. What mattered was the color of his skin. It was as if that alone made him guilty in their eyes. The officers didn't ask questions. They didn't listen. Instead, they slammed him onto the pavement, shouting orders, cuffing him as if he were a dangerous man. Deborah's heart pounds as she recalls the brutal force they used. She can still hear Derek's cries as they pressed him down. His rights, the ones they were supposed to protect, were violated. He was just a victim of a broken system, one that saw him as nothing more than a statistic. The truth didn't matter. The officers didn't care about the facts. They were acting on a deep-rooted bias that ran through the very core of the justice system. As Deborah finishes recounting the arrest, a chill sweeps through the courtroom. The room is heavy with the weight of her words. But it's not over. Not yet. Grayson stands, his face cold and calculating. He knows Deborah is telling the truth, but he has a job to do. He moves in for the cross-examination, his voice sharp, aiming to tear down her credibility piece by piece. He tries to cast doubt on her words, questioning her character, calling her an angry, resentful single mother with an agenda. He insinuates that her testimony is driven by bitterness, not by the truth. Grayson's eyes narrow as he pushes harder. He throws racial stereotypes into the mix, trying to paint her as someone who is just another victim of her own making. His tactics are cruel, but they are nothing new. He's used them before, on people like her, on people who don't have the power to fight back. But Deborah isn't backing down. She won't let him get away with it. Her heart races, but she doesn't falter. And then, in a moment that will change everything, Deborah reveals the truth. She speaks with raw emotion, her voice steady but filled with the weight of years of pain. She tells the court about her own history with the police, how she grew up in a system that saw her as nothing more than a number. She talks about her father, an activist who was wrongfully imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit, just like Derek. How she had witnessed the same brutality, the same corruption, when she was a child. It's a story that no one in the room expected, but one that hits home for everyone listening. She exposes how the system has failed her, how it has failed Derek, and how it continues to fail countless others like them. She tells them how, for years, she's had to fight just to be seen as human. How the system has always been stacked against people like her, people of color, people who have no choice but to endure the harsh realities of racism. She looks directly at Grayson as she speaks, her eyes filled with conviction. And then she accuses him, Grayson, the powerful politician, the man who has been pulling the strings behind the scenes. She accuses him of orchestrating a social experiment, one where racism and class are used as tools to maintain control. She lays bare the truth about how he has used his wealth and influence to manipulate the system, to push his own agenda at the expense of people like Derek. The courtroom is silent. Deborah's words hang in the air like a thunderclap, shaking everyone to their core. For the first time, the truth is out in the open. She has exposed the ugly reality of what is happening in this case, in this city, in this country. She has shown them that this is not just about one man's fate. It's about a system that is broken, a system that needs to change. Grayson's face hardens as he tries to recover, to twist the situation back in his favor. But it's too late. The damage has been done. His wealth and influence no longer give him the power they once did. The courtroom, once filled with doubt, now buzzes with a new energy. The public, who has been watching closely, is starting to see through his carefully constructed facade. As the anger in the room grows, Grayson's attempts to undermine Deborah fall flat. His words are met with growing disdain. The people can no longer ignore what's happening right in front of them. The truth is out, and there's no going back. Deborah, though exhausted and emotional, stands tall. She has done what she came here to do. She has spoken the truth, no matter the cost. She knows the road ahead won't be easy, but in this moment, she has changed the game. And as the courtroom begins to buzz with murmurs, whispers of a reckoning fill the air. The weight of Deborah's words lingers in the courtroom, a heavy silence settling over everyone present. The judge stares at her, his face a mixture of disbelief and awe, as if trying to process the magnitude of what just transpired. The room seems to hold its breath. Every eye is locked on Deborah, who stands tall at the witness stand. She's shaking, but in a way that shows resilience, not fear. Outside, the world feels like it's paused. The pressure that had once threatened to break her is now gone, replaced by an almost eerie calm. But the stillness inside the courtroom can only last for so long. As the silence drags on, people begin to shift in their seats. And then, like a tidal wave crashing into the shore, it happens. One by one, the people in the gallery stand up, slowly at first, unsure of what's happening, and then more quickly, as they begin to grasp the power of what Deborah just did. Her bravery, her courage, is undeniable. She spoke the truth when it mattered most, and in doing so, she gave a voice to those who had none. The applause starts softly, almost like a whisper, but then it grows louder, building in intensity. It's as if the entire room is releasing a breath they didn't realize they'd been holding. Deborah's face tightens, and for the first time in what feels like forever, a tear escapes her eye. She doesn't wipe it away. She doesn't hide it. This is her moment. The moment she stood up against everything that tried to break her. And then, the standing ovation begins. People are on their feet, clapping, shouting, some even crying. The media cameras outside the courtroom can already feel the energy of the crowd, catching glimpses of what's happening within. Deborah's testimony has become more than just words. It has become a statement. A statement about the power of truth, about standing against a system that has failed so many, about what it really means to fight for justice. The applause fills the room, growing louder, each clap echoing her bravery. In that moment, Deborah knows this isn't just for her. This is for every person who has ever been silenced. This is for every person who has been wronged by the very system that's supposed to protect them. This is for Derek, and for anyone who has ever been told they don't matter. Deborah stands there, breathing deeply, her heart pounding in her chest, and yet, she's never felt more alive. She has done what she set out to do, and in doing so, she has sparked something much bigger than herself. As the courtroom settles down and the applause dies down, Deborah can't help but feel a mix of emotions. She's scared. She's uncertain of what comes next. But she knows, deep in her bones, that this is the right path. Her life, her choices, her fight, it has all led her here, to this moment. As the trial ends and she steps away from the stand, the world outside is waiting. The media is already buzzing, capturing every detail, every reaction. People are talking. Deborah is no longer just a waitress. She is a symbol of courage, of strength. She's no longer just someone caught in the middle of a corrupt system. She's become a voice for change. But while the world celebrates her, Deborah knows that this isn't over. The fight for justice doesn't end with a standing ovation. It doesn't end with applause. It continues. Every day, it continues. And now, she's right in the middle of it. In the days after the trial, Deborah reflects on everything that's happened. She never expected this outcome. She never thought her story would make headlines, would make people stand up and take notice. But now, she knows the cost of her courage. Some see her as a hero, a beacon of hope in a world full of injustice. But others, the ones who hold the power, see her as a threat. Deborah is now a target. Her bravery has made her a symbol, but it has also put her in the crosshairs of those who don't want the system to change. The same people who pushed her into this position are now looking for ways to silence her, to discredit her. But Deborah is no longer afraid. She's made a choice, and she's standing firm. She's not just fighting for Derek anymore. She's fighting for the future. For a future where people aren't judged by the color of their skin, where the system works for everyone, not just a privileged few. She's fighting for the countless others who are still trapped in a system that was never designed to help them. As the days pass, Deborah's life changes in ways she never could have imagined. She becomes a voice in the movement for racial equality, for police reform, for justice. But it's not without its challenges. There are threats, whispers, and those who want her to back down. But Deborah won't. She knows the fight is just beginning. And through it all, she stands tall, because she's not just a victim anymore. She's a warrior, and her fight is far from over. The standing ovation was just the beginning. Now, the real work begins. And Deborah is ready. Was Deborah's testimony just about Derek's case, or did it stand for something far bigger? Did her courage spark a fire for change, or was it merely a fleeting moment in a long history of injustice? These questions linger long after the courtroom fades into memory. But one thing is clear, her words were not just for Derek. They were for every person who has ever felt invisible, silenced, or powerless. Her decision to speak the truth, even when it cost her everything, was a turning point, an act of defiance in the face of a broken system. The camera stays on Deborah's face, and you can see the weight of what she's just done. Her eyes are tired, the lines of stress and worry evident. But there's also a sense of peace, a relief, almost, the kind that only comes when you know you've done the right thing, even when it feels impossible. It's a moment that makes you wonder, how many of us have turned a blind eye when we've seen something wrong? How many of us have stayed silent because we were too afraid to speak out? Deborah could have chosen the easy way. She could have stayed quiet, protected her job, her family, her safety. But she didn't. She chose to do what was right. And in doing so, she gave us all a lesson in courage. A lesson that one voice, one act of bravery, can start a ripple. And that ripple, it can change the world. Racism isn't just an issue in isolated pockets of society. It's embedded in systems, in laws, in the ways we treat each other. And while it's easy to feel powerless against such a vast and deeply rooted problem, Deborah's story shows us that it doesn't take 100 voices or 1,000 people to make a difference. It takes one person willing to stand up, to speak out, to challenge the system. Deborah's courage, her willingness to speak truth to power, may have started as an individual act, but it became something much bigger. It became a symbol, a call for justice, a reminder that the fight isn't over, and that it's up to each of us to decide what side of history we want to be on. So, if you've ever faced a moral dilemma like Deborah's, or if you've witnessed racial injustice in your own life, don't stay silent. Your voice matters. The system can only change when we stand together. Speak out, stand up, and never forget that change starts with one brave step. If you found Deborah's story powerful, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Let's keep the conversation going, because together, we can make sure her story is just the beginning. And in our next video, we'll dive into another story of courage and defiance in the face of racial injustice. Stay tuned for more.